some very important persons in our lives right now. Some of us, we have the privilege to be at home or to only work in particular settings. Persons are sacrificing on our behalf. So thank you for creating the opportunity for us to appreciate them and to hear a bit about who they are, what they're going through, and what they would like for us to do. So really is a pleasure to meet everyone. And I just hope that we really have a really fruitful discussion tonight.
All right, thank you, Dr. Greaves. Before we get into the introduction, let me just ask Dr. Greaves to introduce herself, and we want to welcome you to the St. Thomas district. Dr. Greaves, welcome. Some of us know you, but we know we have an international audience. So you need to, yes, my name is Justin Alleyne. First and foremost, I'm the host of Thursday Night Talk, and I just want to take the time to welcome all of you. But now my lovely co-host, Dr. Natalie Greaves, will do the introduction of herself.
Okay, so that's true. So hi, everybody in Barbados and wherever I understand we have persons joining from Boston or other parts of Massachusetts. So I am a Bajan girl, born and bred. The accent does strange things sometimes because I was very fortunate to have been blessed by the free education of our country. So I am a medical doctor, so I would have studied in Jamaica. So sometimes you might hear something that sounds a little Jamaican. And I was fortunate as well to be funded to study in the UK. So my PhD is in primary healthcare management with a focus on palliative care. And my job in Barbados is I'm a general practitioner. I go to persons' homes who have issues related to life-threatening illnesses related to cancer, etc. in particular. But then I also have the good fortune of giving back through lecturing at UE. So my substantive day job is a very academic teaching day job. So I am a lecturer at the university. By virtue of faith, I understand that we prayed. And I'm happy to say that I am a believer in Jesus. And I respect spirituality and religion in all forms. But that's who I am. I'm a mommy. I don't know if you need to know that. I'm a mommy as well. But I think everybody is in another part of the house. So we should be okay. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for introducing yourself to us. And I want to take this time for you now to introduce all of the doctors. So you know we have some panelists, so you take the time to ask them to introduce themselves as well. And you have to unmute your mic, Dr. Greaves.
Yes. The Zoom learning curve. So I'm going to start with some of them I know by virtue of like schoolyard pickups and stuff like that. And some of them, they came highly recommended. So I'm going to start with, I reached out to a colleague of mine and he got back to me. He said, this is the person who will be able to do what you want. So I want to start by asking Dr. Esther Byer-Suckoo to introduce herself and to tell us a little bit about herself. And then we will go on to the other panelists and come back to the other questions. So over to you. I'm going to do the over and out thing. Over to you, Dr. Byer-Suckoo.
Thanks, Natalie. I'm really excited to be here. Yes, I was the person that came, I don't know about highly recommended, but I did come recommended by another colleague of mine who's also working on the front line. We are working doing the COVID-19 testing. So we are really the first people that patients meet. We're doing the majority of the testing for Barbados. Your audience may know me from another life when I wore another hat, having served in government for 10 years, but I am a medical doctor and I did serve my hometown in Ellerton and St. George for, oh my gosh, if I start calling numbers, we're going to be in trouble. But let's just say more than a decade, I served that community. Since having left government, I have been just taking some time to do some things that I really needed to do and wanted to do with myself for a while. I also have returned to doing medical missionary work in Africa. Yeah, I used to do that with Uplift International, a group from Barbados and around the Caribbean also. I used to do that before going into government, and so I've resumed doing that. This time the call is local. My country needs me, so I jumped right in, and I'm volunteering up at the Paragon base where we're doing that testing. Like you, I'm a mom, but my kids are older, so they don't live with me. And I don't see them now because of all that's going on. So that's a little bit about who I am.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time, and we really, really appreciate what you guys are doing. first line in terms of swabs and so forth. We'll talk a little bit some more about the risk that is involved literally as you're taking a COVID swab. But thank you so very much for sharing and for being here tonight. I want to go on to Dr. Belgrave. And if you could tell, I think Justin, if I can call you on this, I think you know her.
Yes, I know her very well. From time she was a little teeny top.
Oh, there.
Oh, there.
Okay, so Justin, you're dating yourself. But Dr. Belgrave, could you just tell us a bit about yourself, and then we will go. Yeah. So Dr. Belgrave, over to you.
So thank you so much for having me on this panel. I actually feel quite honored to sit among, I will say, my big brothers and my big sisters, and also some of my colleagues. I see Dr. Marcia, Dr. Esther, like there's a lot of people who would have taught me when I was younger. So I'm Dr. Sanita Belgrave, and I am a medical professional for about 8 years. I would be graduating with my doctorate in family medicine just in a few months. So I'm just about to wrap that up. However, when I think of myself, I think the non-medical aspect of me is so much bigger. I am a lover of the kitchen. I love reading, always in a book, and I definitely love blogging as well. And the most important thing I like to say is that I think as persons, we need to live up to who we are in terms of our names. So when I think of who I am, my name Sanita means gracious and courteous, and that's the person that I strive to be every day.
Okay, tell us, where are you right now? Tell us where you're right now.
So I've actually been living in the Bahamas for the past 7 to 8 years. I would have left after internship in Barbados. And there was a need over here at the time for doctors to help filling in the family islands. And I would have fulfilled that need, but I've not left at this point. So during the COVID pandemic it's quite difficult because I love the people here, but I also miss home and, you know, being with my family and among my friends at this time.
Thank you.
Well, we wish you safety in all that you do. And I want to, you know Marcia, I think maybe all of us know Marcia. So Marcia, can you join us? This is Dr. Marcia Cambridge-Maxwell. Can you introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you're doing?
All right, I am Marcia Cambridge-Maxwell, originally from Guyana. I left there in 2007 after medical school. And I came here, started internship at QEH from January 2008. After internship, I did internal medicine, I did family medicine, and now I'm working in the Department of Oncology and Nuclear Medicine for about 8 years or thereabout. I have 2 lovely daughters. That's what you meant. We always pass in the schoolyard at pickup time and all of that. But I have 2 daughters at the Adventist primary school, ages 4 and 9. And my husband, he's trying to join us, but he's in another meeting as well. He is Dr. Maxwell. He works in obstetrics and gynecology. So we are both, even though there's a lockdown, we're not benefiting from that lockdown. We are locked down in QEH. So we still have to go out.
Well, we're glad that sometimes at work you can be locked down together and then at home. So you can cross paths, so to speak. So we want to thank you again for joining. So one of the first questions we want to ask you to share, Dr. Byer-Suckoo, she would have talked about the fact, she mentioned some places that some of our listeners might not be familiar with. So she mentioned the fact that she's at Paragon and she's involved with swabbing in terms of taking those particular kinds of swabs. So Dr. Byer-Suckoo, if you could share with us a little bit about what is swabbing, what is a nasopharyngeal swab, what do you actually have to do when you get to work? You just hop out of your car and just what do you do? What's your day actually like? And what is Paragon for persons who are not in Barbados? Oopsies, we think you're still muted. So you unmuted and muted back.
Am I still muted? You hearing me now?
Oh, you're good. You're great. Great to go.
Okay, good. Right. So let me start with Paragon. Paragon is for local listeners. It's up by the airport. Okay, it's in Christchurch, but that is where the Barbados Defence Force has one of their bases. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the government of Barbados did ask the Barbados Defence Force to come on board. So they're part of the whole response. The Barbados Defence Force also has a field medical hospital, and it's actually the first one that the region has. And it's a type 1 hospital, and we are able to deploy that type 1 hospital to any part of the region. We were actually preparing for things like responding to earthquakes and hurricanes and so on. We had not figured at all on a COVID-19 or any sort of pandemic. But so I'm a member of that. I volunteer with the Barbados Defence Force. It is under the aegis of the Barbados Defence Force, but the workers there are mainly volunteers. They're medical and logistical support as well. So we're using the Paragon base. Some of the buildings there are being used for quarantine, and we had the first isolation station also there. But we have also, we've stood up the Barbados Defence Force, the field medical tent. So picture something, you know, like how you would have seen in MASH, those of you who are old enough to know MASH, right? So you have these tents put up, and we're operating out of these tents. So it's temporary, but we expect to be there for the duration. So we could be there for several months. And that is where so while the isolation and the quarantine is going on in the actual brick and mortar buildings, we are actually in the tents doing the testing. So you asked about my day. Our official testing times are 9 to 5. Sometimes we're there much later. But when I get there on mornings, well, of course, we have to make sure we open up the tents and that everything is ready for the patients to come down. We get a list from the Ministry of Health. Persons don't just come in off the street for testing. You call the hotline. We have a hotline in Barbados, and anybody who feels they might have symptoms will call the hotline. And there are many doctors in Barbados who are volunteering to answer that hotline. And once you call that hotline and they think you should be tested, then they put you on a list, and we get that list. So on mornings, one of the first things we do after we open up and make sure everything, well, we sanitize from the night before, but we still have a look over to make sure that everything is intact. And once we get that list, we then start to see the patients. They will come down. Of course, you're coming into a military facility. So when you come, you have to state your business up at the guard command post before they send you to us. And we see them. One of the roles that I have taken on primarily, while we're a small team and everybody does anything that has to be done, but one of the roles that seems to have fallen to me is that of interfacing with the patients directly. So I do the interviewing of the patients when they come, and I also do the pre-test counseling. So you've asked me about the test. That's my job. Every day I start by telling the patients what to expect with the test, how they can tolerate it more easily, what to expect about the results, how to interpret a positive result, how to interpret a negative result. While I'm doing that, one of my colleagues is suiting up, of course, wearing the full personal protective equipment, you know, the face shield and the goggles and the mask and the gown and double gloves and everything. And they're preparing then to start seeing the patients and doing the swab. So I'll tell you what I tell the patients every day. So the swab is a nasopharyngeal swab. Well, it's 2 nasopharyngeal swabs. Every test kit comes with 2 swabs. They're like 2 long Q-tips, you know, with the cotton buds on the end. And the idea is to go in through your nostril and just gently direct that swab into the back of your nose, to the very back of your nose, as far as it will get. Because what the lab is looking for is the presence of virus, COVID virus, in your cells. So we pass that to the very back of your nostril, as far back as it will go, and we leave that there for 10 seconds, maybe just gently twirling it a little bit so that we're getting cells off. We're not drilling, we're just gently touching the area. So we get cells, and then we come back out, and that's one nostril. Now, we can do the other nostril, or if you're one of those people that we can access the back of the throat. So if you can say, ah, and we can see right to the back of the throat. We're not using tongue depressors, because if we use any equipment, we are increasing the risk of contamination. We're increasing the risk to ourselves, the risk of contaminating our area. So if you can say ah, and we can see the back of your throat, then that second swab will go into the back of your throat and we'll also get cells from the back of the throat. Failing that, the other one is for your second nostril. And that goes to the lab. The lab gets them in batches. We do a morning batch and an evening batch. The lab tests overnight. Their test takes several hours. And by the next morning, persons get their results. Yep.
Thank you for sharing. It sounds like a very systematic process where you're taking precautions at all steps. So you're saying one, it's a military base, there's controlled access. In terms of you guys as health professionals, you're doing due diligence and making sure that the environment is clean, you're not going to be contaminated when you come in. And more importantly, your role in terms of making the person comfortable so that they can tolerate the process of getting an adequate sample. And for those of you, there's some things, the thought of maybe something going into your nose might make you, kind of think, hang on a minute, that doesn't feel very comfortable. But as you said, it's an appropriately sized instrument.
It is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It is uncomfortable. And I begin by telling patients that it is uncomfortable. For us, the practitioners, it is very easy because it's a straight in and out. But I explain to the patients, it's made more difficult if you start doing this or you start doing all of that. So I try to explain to the patients why they need to keep their head still. I give them a trick. Open your mouth and just breathe deeply. And in 3 breaths time, that 10 seconds is gone. 2 or 3 breaths. Or what we do when we're in there, we start to count down. 10, 9, 8. We encourage the patients, count down with us. And again, before you know it, that side is done. And then we move on to the second side. By then they realize, most of them, okay, not too bad. It's a little uncomfortable, might burn a little bit, but it's okay.
Straight talk. It's going to be uncomfortable, but don't do anything that's going to make it worse. And then after there's a waiting period, and then you also said you tell them what a positive test means and so forth. Yes. We can come back to that. But Justin, sure. Is there anything that you want us to maybe expand on before we go to Marcia?
No, at this time we can also just remind our persons who are joining us, you can forward your questions to the chat. We have the producers there. They will forward the questions to me. And then we have someone to read the questions for us. Nicole Sober, she's going to read all the questions. And I know there will be a lot of questions because persons are just sending questions. My mom sent me a question earlier. So that is already there. So then we can get all the doctors to answer the questions as well. So we have a segment for that.
Give me the signal and we will definitely make sure that we
answer. No problem.
Now, one of the things that's happening with COVID is that we still want to make sure that our health system functions in other ways. So while there is the emergency center at Paragon where persons are being tested, there's another section where persons might be in quarantine or isolation. Quarantine if you're asymptomatic and not known to have symptoms of the disease or a positive test, etc., separate from isolation. The health persons are still becoming unwell, or persons still have medical conditions other than COVID that need to be managed. And so it's very important to keep our health system running, and persons who are still going out to deliver daily health care are still going to be at more risk than others who are going to be at home. So at this point in time, we want to introduce again Dr. Marcia Cambridge-Maxwell to tell us what her day is like as a health professional during this COVID crisis.
Okay, thanks again, Natalie. As we said earlier, I work at basically the cancer treatment department of the hospital. And while we have been able to reschedule some of the long-term patients who are doing well on 6-month, 4-month, 1-year follow-ups, we still have to see some of the persons who are either very ill, stage 4 cancers, or those who are on treatment. So people who are on chemotherapy, people who are on radiation, those people are not being rescheduled at all. So we would do chemos and radiation every day, and every day we would have to sit down and go through the list of patients for the next day, the persons who were supposed to come to clinic the next day, and do telephone consults, see who needs to come in and who can afford to be rescheduled for next couple of months. So we basically have a telephone clinic, which can be quite stressing especially when you don't get through to patients' telephone numbers and all of that. Sometimes this would have been changed because we're trying to decrease the number of patients who need to be in the clinic setting. Ideally, for our size, they tell us we shouldn't have more than 18 persons in there at a time. So we would have had to have them spaced out 6 feet apart in the waiting area. The relatives cannot come inside with them. Only the patients are allowed in. At the time when we're speaking to the patients and examining them, then one relative can come in. But while they're waiting, the relatives have to be outside of the department. And we've had our hand sanitizers and all of that in place for people coming in. Everybody who comes in gets a temperature, even though you would have had one at the main entrance. We repeat the temperature when you come into the department. So there is that. And the thing is that one of the concerns we have in the cancer department is that a lot of the complications of sometimes of the treatment we have patients on can mimic the symptoms of COVID. So when patients tell us, for example, patients on chemo might get decreased white blood cell counts, they can get a very high fever, they can get respiratory symptoms, and we need to be able to decipher which is which, because the hospital has the policy now, once you have certain symptoms, you are not being able to come into the hospital, you have to go back home, call the hotline number. But if you were dealing with a febrile neutropenic, that could be a difference between life and death, because we need to get them the medication to increase back their white cell count that was dropped because of chemo. But the time waiting to get tested and get results and all of that, it can really cause the patient to demise. So we have to be careful in interpreting what the patient is telling us, knowing what treatment they're on and what their risk was for neutropenia and all of these different complications. And it doesn't help that now COVID is presenting with GI symptoms. Persons can just have diarrhea and all of these things, which, they're right up the chemotherapy and radiation, alley. So it makes things more complicated. Apart from that, every day when we're examining patients, when we're putting up chemotherapy IV lines, we're supposed to dress with certain protective equipment as well. And it's interesting, just asking, before you would ask people to breathe in and out and listen to their lungs as normal, but now simply doing that increase your risk. So we still have to, at work, we still have to have on our mask, and we still ask patients if they have any symptoms, respiratory symptoms, anything at all, any mild symptoms at all, and everybody's coming with masks now. So before we would have had to ask them to put on a mask, but now everybody's coming with a mask. But we still need to be very careful. So far, we've had 2 patients whom we've had to call the COVID team for and send down. But we have a protocol in the department. If patients have X number of symptoms, there's a room we put them in until the COVID team comes and sees them. But as doctors, we still have to be prepared, because if a patient who has cancer has a complication like fluid on the tummy, ascites, they need to have symptomatic relief. So we need to relieve that fluid, get that fluid off. So we can't say, okay, we're waiting for the COVID team or whatever the case is. We have to, put on protective gear and still perform the procedures. Somebody may come with bleeding. We need to give them emergency radiation to stop that bleeding. They still have to be treated. So it's something that you have to really keep your head on and be alert and look for symptoms even before people tell you that they have been experiencing A, B, or C.
In medicine, we talk about a high index of suspicion.
Correct.
Just have to be like super alert, like your radar is going off.
Yes.
So whereas you would usually have 1 antenna, you probably have like 100 on your head every day, where you're literally trying to make sure that you're not missing any sign or symptom, and you're also monitoring and taking care of yourself while you're in your protective gear and not exposing yourself to any undue risk. You would have mentioned a word there 3 times, and I know it's okay for us, but just in case, because you mentioned febrile neutropenia. So, and then so just to break it down, febrile meaning, neutropenia meaning, making sure that everybody's on the same plate. So, because we're listening to people who, some of our members of our audience might have family members who might be on chemo,
True.
or who might be on other things and are still at home and moving back and forth. So we just want to make sure that persons understand some of the things that can mimic COVID, but not necessarily be COVID, but are extremely important and need to be checked out. So just go over again for us, Marcia, febrile neutropenia, please.
Right, so febrile neutropenia is a condition which is experienced by patients receiving chemotherapy who have infiltration of the bone marrow. The chemotherapy can affect the bone marrow, and one of the cell lines produced by the bone marrow are the white blood cells that help to fight infection. So as a side effect, after you've had chemotherapy, the white blood cells can drop, and we call that neutropenia if it goes below a certain number. Not everybody who has a low white cell count will have a fever with it. When you start to have a fever with it, then it can be life-threatening. That patient needs to be admitted, and as opposed to just giving the person some injections in clinic to support the immune system, you need to be giving them intravenous fluids and antibiotics and treat them much more aggressively. So febrile neutropenia is something that can mimic COVID-19 symptoms. The patient can have a high fever. They can start to have respiratory symptoms because they're very prone when the white blood cells are low to infection, any kind of infection. They can pick up a common cold. They can pick up a severe gastro. They might have eaten something that was made the day before, and it wouldn't normally upset them, but because they're neutropenic, because the white cells are low, they get a full-out gastro in response to that. So that is something that we have to be on alert for.
Thank you for the clarity.
For breaking that
No,
down. Yes, Justice City. Okay, good, awesome. So we're gonna, Dr. Belgrave, can you tell us what it's like in Bahamas and your job right now, taking care of patients? And then we're gonna take the question from Justin's mommy.
Okay, so I'm just going to start by saying how to switch devices. So if I do repeat some of what was said before, I do apologize. From what I have heard so far, we do a lot of the similar stuff, and a lot of that has to do with CARICOM that's put in place. So as you know, the Honorable Mia Motley, she's actually the chairman of the CARICOM. And as a result, you will find that even though countries do things very differently, they still speak together to come up with what is best for each country. So with that said, my role is actually very changing. So working in the clinics, a typical day is I come in, by the time I get there, patients are already in the line, they're exercising that 6 feet already. We've already put into place various kind of external pipes so person can practice good hand hygiene prior to coming into the clinic. Now we are actually doing all of our triaging outside under tents as well. And once that person meets a criteria for COVID, we have various hotlines set up, of which I'm also a part of that. So it just depends on which day I'm working. With our hotline, we call them, we tell them we have a suspected case. And then from there, we call our surveillance unit to let them know as well. And then we call and ask an emergency. And the reason we have to call so many places is to ensure that these persons are properly equipped before these patients come. Because as Dr. Esther, I think she was the one that spoke about the protective equipment you have to wear. So that has to be done prior to that patient being transferred from one facility to our testing facilities so that that person could be triaged appropriately. Now, outside of COVID, we still have to make sure our patients, particularly with diabetes, high blood pressure, any comorbidity, that still needs to be addressed. At this time, we are empowering our patients to ensure that they have their own journals at home. So all the patients have our numbers, and like my patients called me this morning, I reviewed, for example, what their blood glucose or blood sugar level was. So it's really important that our patients are empowered now more so than ever to be able to do blood pressures at home, to do blood sugars at home, and then we kind of bring them in when it's most needed. Now, as I said, my role is changing a lot. So come Monday, I'll then join one of those specialty teams that deal with patients who are confirmed and who have mild to moderate symptoms. So our job changes from day to day, but at the present moment is a lot to do with triaging, because we want to get patients to the most important areas as soon as possible. And we also want to make sure that education of patients are paramount, because once patients, we can't do this by ourselves, even if we wanted to. It is persons on the outside practicing social distancing and washing their hands, and just doing those simple things that are going to help this pandemic to decrease.
So Sanita, how do you feel? Because you have this change in role. I'm going to ask everybody this. So just prepare. Marcia and Dr. Byer-Suckoo. You're human and you're going to work every day. You're leaving your house and you're going to work every day and you're putting yourself at risk. Aren't you scared?
Well, the human thing is to be scared. I mean, when we saw the first case in China, that was December 15th that we actually knew about it, but the first case was actually December 1st, you know, that state of fear came about because we are human. Also, everybody has heard about coronavirus in terms of in a medical professional as a student, but it's not something that you go into a lot of depth about. So it was a lot of retraining, particularly how to put on and take off the equipment correctly. All physicians, all nurses had to be retrained. So it was a quick learning curve. So I would say it definitely was scary, but I would say that I'm definitely surrounded with amazing friends and family. So when I called home and I spoke to my grandparents about it, you know, I was reassured. So just having that good support system made it much easier to deal with.
So yay to your family and the other people who are cheering you on and saying, go get them, girl, every day. And Marcia, how about you? How do you, can you mention your children, 2 children? You're leaving home, both mommy and daddy in high risk work environments. How is that for you?
It's scary, Natalie. It is scary. It's my biggest concern, as I think for most medical providers right now, healthcare providers, would be not just getting corona, but bringing it home to your families. I mean, my children are always all over me. You know, if I get anything, I don't know how I would keep it from them. You know, the girls, they sleep in the pillows, everything is shared, you know, they're just always so clingy. So that's something I'm really, really concerned about. Before, you know, when you come home, you try to take off your clothes outside and all of that, but now it's even more cemented. When I leave, I've started wearing lab coats. You know, sometimes I can't tell, last year I wore a lab coat. I've started wearing lab coats to work. I stopped wearing my rings and my watch to work. When I get to the car, I go to the trunk first, take off the lab coat, spray it up with the Lysol, put it in a plastic bag, spray up the stethoscope and everything, spray up. I have my cell phone in a Ziploc bag. And, you know, you spray that up and then take it out, and then you go in the car, you're still spraying up the car. And then when you come home, you still dress at the door and you go bathe and wash it before you get any hugs and anything like that. It's made you extra careful. And I have hand sanitizer everywhere you turn, on the bags in the car, you know, on the children's bag, all over the house, and you washing. I was an advocate for hand washing before, but now it's now it's like never before. So it has made me extra cautious. My biggest concern is making the girls ill, and I'm really hoping, and they have a wonderful couple who babysit for us, since we both have to go in every day. And I would hate to know that, you know, I take anything to them. And it's just, so that is really my biggest concern. I think about that every single day. So for me, that is my greatest fear.
So we feel you, and I just put down here on my paper, because that's what I'm doing sometimes when I look to my right, I'm writing down what I need to do. I think, Justin, before we leave, we pray a blessing of safety,
Yes.
all of these ladies and everybody else that's in that category.
Right. So after Dr. Esther take your question, then we will go to the audience for questions, and then we're going to ask Nicole. She's going to conduct and she's going to ask those questions.
Yes.
So after Dr. Esther.
Yes.
Sure. Right. So I can certainly relate to what Marcia was saying. That is entirely my routine, coming in and spraying the keys, washing even my glasses get washed, and everything. I can relate. I wasn't afraid at first. I am the kind of person who just kind of jumps in there. And so like last 2 trips I made to Africa, my kids were, Mom, you sure you have to go? You know, Ebolas are going around in Africa. Are you sure you have to be there? But they knew I was going to be there. So they released me to go to Paragon to do this on condition that, Mommy, don't die here. My boys are very cynical, you know, Mommy, you go, but Mommy, don't die here. Okay, fine. So I take extra caution. When our first patient died, because as I said, most of the patients who have COVID, who have tested positive, we've tested up at our facility. So we've interfaced with almost all of them. A few were tested at the polyclinic or at Sir Winston Scott and the polyclinic in town, or at accident and emergency. Most of them we tested. So we got to know them. So when the first one died, but then it was when, and then we had 3 men die, and then we had a 52-year-old lady who died. I'm going to be 52 this year, okay? So that one kind of, because I was saying to my husband all along, yeah, it's okay. You know, it's the 70-year-olds, it's the 80-year-olds, they're the ones that are dying. And then a 52-year-old lady died, and he looked at me and he says, right? Okay, so I'm released by my family to do this on condition that I take no chances. So even among ourselves, there are 3 doctors up there working, and among ourselves, I've said to them, look, right now we have the luxury of taking a day off. Let's take a day off ever so often. We don't need to work until we drop, because it's when you work to the point of fatigue that we can make a mistake. And one mistake could be fatal for us, for our families, and for our colleagues that we're working around, because we have our safe space, our command center, and that's a clean space, but a simple mistake can bring that in to all of us. So we take a break now. I've had 3 off days I've been working from the 18th of last month, so just about a month now, and I've had 3 off days. So we're trying to take some off days in between to get some rest, so we're not making those mistakes that you can make when you're tired. Yeah.
Thank you very much,
That's
Dr.
very
Esther.
important.
Sorry, before you go on, just wanted to add to what Dr. Esther was saying, because outside of, yes, sanitizing everything, as Dr. Marcia said, we do it more now. I have to say that when it came to my mental health, that was something that I had to be more cognizant of. So like when I get home, like I put down social media, I put down like everybody for a while, and that's just my me time where I just connect with that higher feeling of just being happy. I talk to God, because it's so important. Like she was talking about taking breaks, and like I'm not that type of person who want to take a break, but like now I have it scheduled into my day, because it's not like we cannot run ourselves down to the ground. It's not going to be just people who have comorbidities are not going to do well. It's also going to be that person who doesn't get enough sleep at night, or you know, who is just totally stressed out or bogged down. So she's absolutely correct. Like that's one thing that I must say that I changed along with the sanitizing, was definitely looking at saying, hey, I even have it so funny, like at 11 o'clock every day, my phone alarm, and it says to smile, and it may seem so simple, but I just find that that tends to be the most hectic time of the day for me. So then that 11 o'clock alarm comes on and says smile, like I will just burst out in laughter, and that just drops a few pounds of stress for me. But for me, that's very important.
Okay, ladies, thank you very much. So
You know,
far,
I'm stealing that. I'm stealing that idea.
Great. Just gonna let you know that this program is sponsored by the St. Thomas District. The St. Thomas District, they sponsored this program, and also Faith and Fresh Produce. We just have to let you know that. At this time, we are going to go to some questions, but before we get to the questions, just want to let you know that we have another frontline person. She's all the way in Boston, Massachusetts, and she's a frontline worker. We're going to bring her into the loop shortly, but we're going to take the questions now. We're going to ask Nicole Sobers to ask those questions to our lovely panelists. Nicole Sobers, come right in and ask those questions that you have from the audience. And audience on YouTube, we are happy to have you as well. Send your questions in, and we will try our best to answer. I gotta beg my producers for a little bit more time tonight. Go ahead, Nicole.
Thank you, Justin. Good night, ladies. Good night, everyone. So I have 3 questions here. I know that we have there are a lot of videos and different messages that are going around, that are coming out. Social media is very busy about the things that you should or you should not do where the virus is concerned. So I have 3 questions. The first question is, how do you protect yourself from the virus when others are in and out of the house? How do you protect yourself from the virus when others are in and out of the house? Now you yourself have been talking about some things that you have been doing when you leave work or when you get home. But for those who are at home and they may have persons who they're not going out, but other members of the family have to go out when they go out and come in, how can you protect yourself in that way?
I think what is important is that the persons who are going out take the responsibility not to bring anything in. You know, the persons who are going out have to do like I do when I go out. When I come back in, I know I have to sanitize everything. I leave my shoes at the door. I take my clothes off at the door, put them in a bag, and the next step that I wash them. And I have to be super careful with, you know, sanitizing. You know, they're telling you when you bring your groceries in, wipe down all the groceries. So anything that's coming in has to observe those rules. So yeah, you're the one sitting at home and you don't want to be at risk. But the truth is, apart from your washing your hands all the time, because you don't know what they might have touched and come into touch. If you're at home, you got to wash your hands all the time or sanitize your hands, and don't put your hands to your face. Don't put your hands to your eyes, your mouth, and your nose. That's probably all you yourself can do. But anybody else in the house has to take the onus upon themselves to do those things. Leave everything leave all the germs at the front door. Don't bring them in the house.
Okay, thank you very much.
So in addition to that, I would say that I totally agree. But just to take it a step further. So earlier, I know Dr. Esther was not answering this question, but she actually answered it when she said, when she gets home, she sanitizes everything, and she spoke about her glasses, her keys. And I think that's something that the person needs to do. You think about everything you possibly touch, and those are the areas that you have to disinfect. So particularly door handles. A lot of people forget to clean the door handles. Females are known to carry handbags out. You need to clean those when you come back in. In terms of your shoes, you know, Bajans don't walk through the house with their shoes, so remember to leave those at the door. And then the second thing that I would add is we have to learn how to read the labels of products. So a lot of time you buy products, for example, the Lysol, and you want to kill the virus, and it tells you sanitizing does not do that. You actually have to disinfect. So to disinfect, the label tells you you have to keep on these products for at least 10 minutes before you actually clean them and wipe it off. So it's not as simple as just spraying it and then you just grab the keys. You spray it, you let it sit, and you go from there. And then if these products are visibly dirty, so if you see dust or dirt on the glasses, for example, you have to clean that off first before you can disinfect. So I think that if we do these things when we come back, that really helps. And then finally, when you actually go out, you want to make sure that you're practicing social distancing. You know, you're touching people just at the elbow. So you're not doing that usual friendly Bajan hug and Bajan kiss or shake hands, but you're, you know, just knocking people at the elbows, and you're practicing good hand hygiene and good cough hygiene. So if you do have to cough, you want to wear that mask on the outside. That mask gets dirty, you change it. And, you know, help people out, because there's some people who don't understand this, and we could just offer a friendly reminder to some persons.
Thank you so very much. That actually covered a part of two of the other questions that I have. One of them is, what is the most effective sanitizing process when persons return home? You just give some really in-depth information there on how we can do that, that it's only not just about wiping off the shore, but actually disinfecting and leaving items there to make sure that they're actually clean. So that's another part of it. The other one is about masks. So we know that that's a big thing. We've been hearing, we have voice notes, we have videos. We see that there are a number of persons who are actually making these masks. But what's the benefit really of the homemade mask? Any of you can answer.
Okay, well, I speak to masks every day. Every day I have to talk to patients, and part of our pre-test counseling, I explain to them about masks, because there is a danger in masks, and it is why the international agencies, the WHO, the CDC, and so on, they've hesitated before saying to the public everybody should wear masks, because when you wear masks, you actually feel more confident. You have a false sense of security that you're doing something that is helping you. One of the things I tell the patients every day is that when they wear a mask, you're wearing a mask to stop whatever's in the atmosphere from coming into you. So it's sitting on the front of the mask. But if you watch people with masks, they're always adjusting the mask and filling up the mask and so on. So whatever they're trying not to get in their airways directly, they're putting on their hands. And the hands are going on the keys, on the glasses, on the cell phone, on the handbag, on the steering wheel, on everything. Or they pop a mask on to go into the supermarket. They come back out, take the mask off, put it on the car seat, and turn on the AC. So whatever was on that mask, when they turn on the AC, everything that was on that mask, they have just put into the air.
The atmosphere.
So yeah, they put it in the atmosphere, they put it in their AC, so they haven't really protected themselves. They've only delayed themselves from getting that germ. So, I'm always telling folks, when you wear a mask, you need to wear it for the stipulated time. Don't wear it if it's wet. So if you've been coughing and sneezing into the mask and it gets wet, you need to change the mask. When you change the mask, as you would with a piece of tissue, you don't hold it in your hand. You take it off gently without dispersing everything. If you snap it off and everything goes into the atmosphere, then again, you're going to breathe it in. So gently lift it off, dispose of it, wash your hands or sanitize if you're out and you don't have soap and water, and replace that mask. So those are things that I tell them every day, because we are moving to wearing cloth masks. Now, cloth masks are not for health professionals. And I'm seeing a lot of cloth masks now that have a pocket inside that you can put an additional layer, because some of the cloth masks are really just 2 layers of fabric, and that may not be sufficient. So by putting a little pocket inside, folks are actually inserting something else, another layer or another mask inside that they can use. But again, they have to be very careful how they handle and how they store, and that they don't reuse masks. The cloth masks need to be washed, not stick it in your bag and pick it up tomorrow and put it back on. You have to care for that mask properly.
All right.
The other
Go
thing
ahead,
to
Natalie.
add to the mask discussion is that we don't want persons to be confused that any kind of seeming recommendation to wear masks means that the mechanism for transfer of the virus has changed. It doesn't mean that that by wearing a mask, which covers your nose and mouth, means that COVID-19, the virus that causes COVID-19, is airborne. As far as we know, the current science is that it's a droplet infection, transferred by droplet, meaning that if I cough and I sneeze, and viral particles are mixed with the saliva moisture from those airways and somebody else breathes it in, or those droplets go on a particular surface, as Dr. Byer-Suckoo said, including the mask, we have a problem. So I realized that some persons became very panicked. They were like, oh, see, it's been airborne all along. So it can become aerosolized with enough pressure. Yes, and under the right.
Big cough.
So persons who have, massive coughing fits, it can go longer distances. Persons who, like Dr. Maxwell, Cambridge-Maxwell, it had to come into contact with. If you're intubating someone or suctioning someone, the viral particles can go very far. But wearing a mask does not in any way substitute for the respiratory hygiene, the good respiratory hygiene and hand washing technique. That's not, the mask is not going to protect you. I felt very sad sometimes yesterday when I was driving around and people had the mask underneath their chins and so forth. You could tell people were uncomfortable because of the heat and whatever else. And people, it's dry season now and cane arrows in the ear and all that. Sinuses are flaring up, mango pollen is all over. So people feel congested, but they feel like they need to wear the mask, but then they want to take it off, put it down, and it's on. And if it's on, it's on. And as she said, when you're taking it off, you're taking it off from behind the ear. But unless the science changes, we don't want you to think that wearing a mask means that it's airborne. So don't panic that there's something just floating for meters and miles in the air.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Greaves. We have with us also Nicole Headley. She's all the way from Boston, Massachusetts. We want to bring her in now and let Nicole share with us what is going on in Massachusetts, what is happening in her neck of the woods. Nicole, she's also she has family in Barbados currently as well. So Nicole, can you hear us, Nicole?
Loud and clear, Justin.
Loud and
Hello, everyone.
clear, loud and clear. So you heard the question. So explain to us what is happening in your neck of the woods and just share with us who you are and what you do, where you are.
Okay, so hello, everyone. My name again is Nicole Headley, and I am currently working at one of the 4 public health hospitals in Massachusetts. I am the safety and training compliance officer there. So basically dealing with a lot of stuff in the environment of care, emergency management, and managing different training functions for the hospital to make sure that compliance is up to date.
Okay, great. So tell us, explain to us what have you been experiencing over there?
Well, as far as COVID is concerned in the
Yes.
in the hospital, or you mean outside of?
And
there?
COVID in the hospital where you are.
Okay. Well, as one of the public health hospitals, you can imagine we're dealing with a vulnerable population. So managing it from that aspect it's very difficult at this time because it seems to be like the surge. The campus that I'm on, it's different services that are on there. So you have mental health, you have the Department of Corrections. So there are different functions on the campus. So trying to manage it in different areas from different aspects at different levels, it's a very complicated thing. But I can say I've tried to listen in a little bit before, and I heard people talking about hand hygiene and mask and the protective equipment, personal protective equipment. And I say that these things are, yep, very, very important, and they all work. They should coincide. Masking does not replace social distancing, and social distancing does not replace masks. These things go hand in hand. In order for us to, to combat this thing, people have to be compliant. I'm not sure how it is there, but right here now, everyone is expected to wear masks. There are different types of masks, and I heard a discussion about people making their own masks and stuff at home. I think for right now, the CDC is recommending that when you leave home, that you wear a mask. Masks, they're not just to protect other people, they're to protect other people from you, because it stops whatever the droplets from spreading from that way. I'm not sure if I answered your first question, but
yes, you did well. You did well. So here, since you invited me back, just a little programming note. We are quickly coming to the end of our show, so we just want to have as many questions as possible to all of the medical professionals here.
Sure.
And Dr. Greaves, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
What we want to do very briefly, so thank you very much, Nicole, for the contribution in terms of the synergies that need to exist between the various kinds of mechanisms. And we do encourage persons, if they're going to wear masks, as yet they're not fully mandatory in Barbados, that they take the necessary due caution, and that we learn from other persons' experiences. So starting with Dr. Cambridge-Maxwell, if you could just say one thing, this is for everybody, one thing that you would like persons to understand about COVID, what would that one thing be? One thing that you want persons to understand about COVID, and maybe if you put in brackets the control of COVID.
Mm-hmm. Natalie, that would have to be, I would have to stress the social distancing. It is really something that works. As you know, last week or the week before, I would have had to do that that video for East Carib, and we actually showed a diagram. Every time persons speak, right now I'm speaking, when you sing, it doesn't have to always be a cough or a sneeze, but every time we open our mouths, droplets are coming out. And these droplets can have the virus in it. And if the virus, studies have shown that these droplets can go as far as 6 feet, but it can also go beyond the 6 feet. So with all of the precautions, we're taking all of the masks and everything else, the social distancing plays a very, very integral part. And there's a lot of debate on, you know, flattening the curve and you still get the same number of incidents and all of that. But with our healthcare system and what the facilities we have being borne in mind, we really, really need to minimize the number of cases that we have at any given time. So we really want Bajans to appreciate the fact that social distancing works, whether we're in a tropical climate where the temperature is above a certain degree. That does not give us any protection. Yes, viruses like the cold environment and they flourish in that environment, but they're still transmitted in the tropical setting. So we really need to take it seriously and stay home if you can. Even when you're out, you're wearing your mask, you're doing whatever, still social distance yourself. It doesn't only speak to the physical distance between you and someone, but it speaks to the number of times you come into contact with others. Try to minimize those times. If you do not have to go to the supermarket, do not go. When you do go, try to get as much as you can for as long as you can and stay home. Not because the supermarkets are open, you need to run in every week, right? So we really need to change our mindset as Barbadians, as Caribbean people, all right, in terms of taking the precautions very seriously, Natalie.
Okay, all right. Dr. Byer-Suckoo, one of the things that you would want to advise or stress for Barbadians, we have social distancing in terms of frequency of contact, distance between others, staying home if you don't need to go, taking, you know, advice from the public health professionals and being law-abiding citizens. Yes. Is there anything that any other messaging that you would like for persons to really understand? Oh, you're muted, sorry.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So no, there's nothing I wanted to add. In fact, those were exactly what I would have said. Stay at home. If it's one message I would give you, stay at home. These are desperate times. These are different times, and we have to reassess how we do things. As was said just now by Dr. Cambridge-Maxwell, you don't need to go to the supermarket all the time. So you've run out of oil, you've run out of butter. Guess what? Try eating with a little less butter. Try just for a bit eating with a little less salt when you run out of salt. Modify the way you cook, modify the way you eat. You don't have to run out because you're out of one thing. If you could stay at home, you know, and I'm sure I tell my patients every day, after you've had the swab done today, I think you will after you've had the swab done, I think you will stay at home, because I don't think you want to have to come back here when you actually develop symptoms another time. So stay at home. It's best for all of us if you stay at home. Social distancing, wearing the mask, all of that, as was said just now, they all go in tandem. Do all of them at the same time. But the best place for you right now, if you don't have to go out, home.
I agree.
Yes.
Thank you very much,
And
Esther. Natalie,
there's just a request. Sure,
yeah,
there's just a request to. Oh, sorry.
just let me
Speaking
state here. No, that's all right. Just let me state here. The producers have given us some more time. So just letting you know that what we're gonna do as you are wrapping up with the doctors, we're gonna take all of the questions from the YouTubers. We just want to welcome all the YouTubers, all those who are joining us via YouTube, all those who are joining us who just came in. We just want to thank you as well. So we have some extended time up to 8:45. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take all the questions now, and then roll like that. Okay.
Okay, cool. So there was a question that came in here on the chat. So I'm just going to address that question. It was asking about resistance. And isn't there anything that can be done for resistance? So we were going to remember social distancing, and we're going to remember the hand washing and everything going in tandem. And then if Natalie and Sanita want to put in their extra messages at the end. So the question was to the panel, what can people do to boost their resistance? So we would have mentioned rest. We would have mentioned mindfulness before, staying in a calm way and so forth. What other lifestyle measures would you advise persons to do? Because we don't have a cure, we don't have a vaccine, but how can we generally just keep our bodies as well as possible? And Marcia, maybe you can start with that, and then Sanita, and then Dr. Byer. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Yes, Natalie. There are many things they can do. some people would have heard about New Start before. These are 8 doctors that we talk about, NEWSTART. The first one is nutrition, eating well. I know a lot of people are home and we have bought a lot of snacks, but in too many cases, these snacks are junk foods and a lot of fruity drinks and things that are not healthy. We really need to make sure that we're still eating healthily and making sure that it's a balanced diet, making sure that we're not skipping meals, eating on time, especially for school children and elderly persons, making sure you kept that same routine that they would have been in when they were at school or in a normal setting. Also keeping very active. The fact that we're indoors, we're in lockdown, doesn't mean that we should lie down all day. It is very, very hazardous for us. And one of the things that we can do too in terms of being active, just even if you're amputee, you had your lower limbs cut off, you can still sit up, move around. There's several different exercises you can do with whatever limitation you're faced. Even if you don't have a big yard or anything like that, getting early morning sunlight, Natalie, is very healthy. The vitamin D, people are trying to buy up all sorts of multivitamins, but that vitamin D is the best. And I've heard you said it before too, Natalie, when we're eating a balanced diet, we don't really need to get all these additional vitamins and supplements. Right. Once we have the fruits and vegetables in our normal diet, in our regular diet every day, we're getting all of these vitamins in the right proportions, in the natural forms as well. Using lots of water. I like to tell patients, you know you're drinking enough water when the urine looks like water. So you make sure you drink it. That would vary based on your environment and your activity. If you're in an air-conditioned unit or if you're a construction worker, but when you're home, it may not take as much water to do that. But keep well hydrated. And these are things that we can do to boost the immune system in any setting, not just COVID. As we said before, Natalie, with rest and something called temperance, which is the moderate use of that which is good and the abstinence from that which is bad. So we have banned alcohol in this setting, but smoking might still be permissible, but it's not healthy for you. At this time, and at any time when you talk about strengthening your immune system, you want to avoid smoking, you want to avoid using alcoholic products and any stimulants, any controlled substances, you want to stay away from those. When we're talking about what to eat as well, the low protein, high fiber diet is most beneficial to us, what we call a Mediterranean diet. And of course, trust in God, Natalie. We need to, and I can tell you, when the whole thing started, I was ball by ball. I knew every number, every statistic for every region, CNN, BBC, I was looking at everything. And it could become overwhelming, but you know, to have trust in God and to have that solace to go to have used the time at home to catch up on your reading, whether it's your Bible study, talk to others about different studies that you can do, and have that trust in God that, you know, that hallelujah anyhow mentality. Whatever happens, it will be okay. I may get COVID, but God will see me through. And there's life eternal where there's no COVID. All right. So that hallelujah anyhow mentality, do your best as far as it's up to you. And those are the things that studies have shown, science has shown, that can strengthen the immune system and help us to sustain ourselves against all of these infectious diseases.
All right, Dr. Greaves, we thank Dr. Cambridge so much. We're going to take the questions. We're going to ask the doctors if they can. I know that they want to give us the best information, but we got to get into all the questions and the time in as well. So we have to do a delicate balance here. So if you can, Dr. Greaves, help us out. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Can I see the question? If you can.
Sure. Nicole is going to ask the questions.
Sure.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah.
The first question is, what is the difficulty in coming up with the vaccine?
Okay, so the difficulty is that vaccines take time. You can identify what is called the genome of a particular virus, meaning the particular patterns, like say, for example, the fingerprint of that particular virus. But once you figure out the fingerprint and how to disrupt it, you still have to make sure that it's safe for humans. So I'm sure Nicole and everybody else out there, you wouldn't want anything to be put into your body that's going to make you unwell. So from ethical perspectives, we never want to do anything that's harmful to anybody. We only want to do what is good. And the vaccine has to go through particular phases, and it has to be tested in the lab, it has to be tested in animals, and then it has to be tested in subsets of humans, just to make sure that if we give the vaccine, we understand what the vaccine can cause that might be unintended or that might be harmful. So while we might want to rush and do something, we don't want to then have many people having something inside of their bodies, which could then make them more ill, not necessarily from COVID, but from something else. So vaccines need, I was just about to scratch my nose there. Vaccines take time because you want something that's going to be delivered. If it's going to be delivered to thousands and millions of people, you absolutely have to be sure that the risk of side effects is going to be very, 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 very minimal, almost zero if possible. Although zero is never really possible because all human beings are not alike. So the vaccine has to go through trials. So that is the thing. But the fact of the matter is the genome is known. So that special pathway of the virus is known. And that's a big breakthrough. Once you have that, you can start to really think about manufacturing.
Okay, great. Thank you. And the next one, is it possible for a person who has recovered from COVID to get it again?
I believe so.
Yes, it's very
Any of us,
possible. Sorry, it's very possible. I mean, we could use China as an example, and they have had hundreds of cases that have been reinfected. Yes, we would like to know that people develop some level of immunity, but the reason why the COVID virus was changed to novel is because it's new. So we are learning so much about it as the days goes by, and definitely immunity is seen, but we do see persons being reinfected.
Okay, thank you. Justin, that's it for the questions that I have because the other ones were addressed already. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh,
Great.
that's wonderful. Did we answer
Great.
Mommy's question?
Okay, great. Dr. Esther, do you want to add anything? You want to say anything as we wrap up the show? So we're going to take it in order. Dr. Esther, Dr. Cambridge-Maxwell, Dr. Sanita, Belgrave, and then we're going to bring back in Nicole as well to do some stuff with Nicole.
Well, first, again, I want to thank you for having me. And I want to encourage more groups to be doing this kind of thing. I laud you completely for doing this because it is so important that people have access to information. Yes, your focus is on highlighting the first responders, but from what I've heard, it has given your audience a lot of information. And I want to encourage that kind of interchange where people can have access to credible information. There's a lot of information out there and a lot of misinformation out there. I'm grateful that I'm working with a team of volunteers and persons from the Ministry of Health at Paragon. We had a steep learning curve because we never set up for anything like COVID. And I heard at the beginning, Natalie said, oh yeah, it sounds like you have a very systematic thing going. And I smiled because at first it wasn't. You know, we very quickly, every day we met and said, okay, what could we have done differently here? What did we need to do? And so, yes, now we have a rhythm going and everybody has a role, but we all interchange because we're a small team. I want to encourage you to pray for us and for all the first responders, because we are all putting our lives on the line. When this is done and everybody gets to go back to work and go back to school and play, we have to go into quarantine for 2 weeks because we may have encountered the last patient and then we are still considered to have been exposed. So we then have to go into quarantine. So we're in it for the long haul. We know this is not going to finish next week, or we know it's a long period. We're doing our best to take care of ourselves and to not to affect our families, but we need your support, your prayers, and all the interchanges like this that we can get. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Dr. Maxwell?
Yes, Justin, I really want to echo Dr. Esther's comments and what she said in terms of getting accurate information, and really thank her too for the job that they're doing up at Paragon. It's very important that we get accurate information. As she said, there's a lot of fake news out there, and it spreads, sometimes it spreads easier or quicker than the real information, than the accurate information. But before we share something, let us ask ourselves, can this be verified? Have we seen this on the legitimate news before we share it to anyone? And something I want to warn us against, even as we're home now, most of us are in lockdown, is the danger of screen time. We have a problem with not not just the children, but even the young adults and older people, we need to limit the screen time. Let's find other activities to do to keep ourselves engaged, whether it's games, crafts, whatever it is, but we need to limit the screen time. We're seeing lots of addictions already. We're seeing persons who are gonna have side effects like dementia in the young people related to the increased screen time and all of that. So we need to be very, very cautious. There are other things we can do besides following everything, all the streaming, all the Zooms, all the YouTube, all the Netflix. We really need to limit the screen time, Justin.
Yes, Dr. Belgrave, go ahead.
So I just want to end by echoing the words of my colleagues by first thanking you all for putting on this production and having us all here. I just want to say that amidst everything in terms of fear, that we must remember something that's very unique and special about Caribbean people. Caribbean people are resilient people, and we are that because we are our brother's keepers. And that's the only way we're going to flatten this curve. It's not about what I do, but it's about what everybody does. So when I go outside, I have to social distance because it's not about me, but it's also about that other person that I'm protecting. You know, if your elderly neighbor can't get outside and maybe I can get their groceries for them to protect them, that is important. And then I would just end by saying, regardless of what is going through that, we must never lose our faith in God.
That's right.
Deuteronomy 31:6 tells us to be strong and courageous. It tells us that we should not fear because, you know, God will never leave us or he will never forsake us. So at the end of the day, yes, we are asking you for our prayers and we are asking you for all of this. But at the end of the day, everything that we do from our training up to saving people is because of God. And we need to remember that our hope must end with him and begin with him. So I just want to remind persons that as we go through this pandemic, and yes, it's very scary, and there's so much new changes to our lives, that we must not forget our hope and our strength and our belief in the Father above.
Amen.
Nicole, all the way from Massachusetts.
Yep, I am here. I'm here.
Yes. We know we haven't engaged you as much, but we just want to ask you to share some things with us in your neck of the woods. You know, what would you say to us down here in Barbados? As a wrap up.
I would say to take this pandemic and this disease very seriously. I know some people think there is, I heard, you know, the talk about stuff on the media and stuff, but it is real. It is a real disease. It is really affecting people. And in the height of it now, you can really see the intensity and how this thing is taking effect on frontline workers, on everybody. The world has practically, you know, shut down, and we are at the mercy of this thing. Faith in God is, you have people that haven't, you know, said a prayer or even looked in that direction in a long time doing that now. And that is something that is definitely sustaining. So God will get the glory too out of this.
Amen.
Man, thank you so much. Dr. Natalie Greaves, you want to say anything final as my assistant, my co-host? I learned a lot from you tonight as well.
Well, it was a pleasure being here, just like everybody else. We just want to thank you for the opportunity to share. I want to thank all of our colleagues, Dr. Esther Byer-Suckoo, Dr. Marcia, Cambridge-Maxwell, Dr. Sanita, Belgrave, and Nicole, Headley, for just making the time. And we just publicly again want to ask God to continue to bless you and to sustain you and your families in your work. And we hope that persons will be able to go back on YouTube and look at this and revise some of the things and the important, especially the new start tips, how you can, you know, make your body resilient while you're also being a law-abiding citizen. And that's it for me.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who just joined us, you missed a wonderful show we had tonight on our Thursday night talk. We just want to thank all of the persons, even from Boston, Massachusetts, all over, persons in Bahamas, Bermuda, all over this world. You have just joined the St.Thomas district and their Thursday night talk. So I just want to thank the producers. They have been gracious to us. They work hard behind the scene. All of the producers, all of the persons that you don't see, these persons work extremely hard to get something like this pulled off. And, you know, contacting doctors all over the world. medical practitioners. We just want to thank all of the persons who are working hard day in, day out, night in and night out to make us safe. And the knowledge that we've just received, we are really, really thankful to them. We want to thank our all the persons who would have made this possible, our sponsors, Clayton Alexander, Fresh Produce, and also the St. Thomas District for allowing us to use our their Zoom platform. We want to thank them very much as well. We want to thank all those on YouTube because we've reached our maximum of 100 persons now. We have the our health and temperance coordinator just joined our feed, so we just want to welcome her, Priscilla Prevost. And just to let you know too as well that next week and next Thursday we're looking at beyond COVID-19. What is your response? Beyond COVID-19, what is your response? And look out for that. That is going to be a big one. That's going to be a big one. It's going to be awesome. And I just want to, again, all the persons on YouTube, just letting you know that tomorrow morning we continue at 8 a.m. with another morning devotion. At 8 a.m. we have our morning devotion, and we're just going great. So those of you who can't join the link, just let you know that you can just put on and YouTube the St. Thomas District, and you will see us there as well. So again, thank all of the medical practitioners, all of those on the front lines. We just want to thank you. We applaud you. We are happy for you. We are elated for the work you're doing. So at this time, we'll just pray and close. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for a wonderful experience, a talk, a discussion we had with the medical practitioners and the first responders, those on the front lines. We are thankful for them. We pray for their protection. We pray for their families as well who are afraid because they're going out and coming in, they don't know what will happen. So we just ask, oh Lord, that you will protect them, you will guide them, you will direct them. And the work that we are doing here in the St. Thomas District, help bless this effort, bless electricity, bless the internet, bless the work that we are doing, oh Lord, that we are reaching so many persons. So we ask, oh Father, that all of the first responders, all the doctors, nurses, all of those people who are working together, Lord, help them. And we pray, Lord, that as we go through it, we will come out smiling, better people. For these things we ask in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
As per usual, we will leave the chat open for those of you who just want to say something nice. Say hello to persons that you have not seen for a long time. It is your time to do that. So all of the persons, again, for those of you join us, we just want to thank you. Thank you very much.
And Justin?
Yes, please.
Dr. Maxwell apologizes for his absence.
Yes.
Then he had to step out.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Sorry.
I was to say something about that too as well. So sorry, Dr. Maxwell couldn't join us. So extend our greetings to him as well. I know he's working very hard. Extend our greetings to him.
I will do. Thank you.
Thank you.